Hello, everyone, and welcome to Pepcast. I have a great episode for you here today. Today we have Janelle Noel, um, which is a conversation I recorded a while back. It might have been the first conversation I recorded for this podcast, actually. And it's interesting to see how some things have changed since then. Like I was at the beginning of my grad school journey then, and now, I'm at the end of it, finished up, which is cool. My hair was a lot shorter, and it's about to be a lot shorter soon because I'm going to get it cut soon, finally, and donate it. Um, Anyway, we talked about a lot of really cool things, um, like dissociative identity disorder, personality disorders, the concept of dissociation in general, and that phenomenon and spectrum, and we get into that. A lot of different mental health related things, and also touch on some ways about how those things tie into substance use. So, without further ado, I want to jump into it, and yeah, I hope you enjoy. Thanks.
I think, because I don't know what we have with them. All right. So, hello, everyone. I am here with Janelle Noel, and I'm very happy to be here with her. And she seems very happy to be here and excited to share a little bit of her story. Janelle, how are you today?
I'm doing so well. Yeah, I'm always happy to talk about my story and yeah, things just keep getting better and better. So
Okay, great. Well, what's been better? What's when you say things keep getting better and better? What's been causing you to feel pretty good lately about things, how things are going? I always like to start on a positive note.
hmm yeah, well, I'm thinking about and there's so many different areas of
Hmm.
that when dealing with recovery, especially, from trauma,
Right,
um
right.
that are kind of working synergistically.
Hmm.
And
Good
I'm
word.
just Thank you. Thank you. I really like that word lately,
Yeah.
synergistically. Um, and I'm just realizing, how the momentum from,
Hmm.
just all the different therapies that I've been trying that weren't really helping before are kind of all coming together. And yeah, everything's just coming together really
Okay.
well.
So could you tell people a little bit who are listening or who are watching a little bit about yourself, about who you are and, just how you like to think of yourself?
Sure. Yeah. And it's always evolving. That's something
Right.
that
That's why it's not always easy to talk about.
Yeah, yeah, and it's something that's like made me a little bit nervous in the past. I've
Hmm.
always had these expectations of what I needed to be, or where I needed to be.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
crazy how those expectations can just kind of lead to definitions and then we have to almost deconstruct those.
Oh yeah, and that's so much work, especially, with the idea of once the idea that once you're a certain age, your personality is like set in stone or
Hmm.
whatever. I do feel as though that's a pretty limiting belief that I'd love to
Hmm.
talk more when it
Yeah,
comes
definitely. We can talk a little more
recovery.
about
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. But yeah, I am a Master of Social Work student, technically Master of
Hmm.
Social Service at Bryn Mawr College. And I am someone who really, I don't know, enjoys kind of taking different approaches to, oh, I'm having some trouble here
It's all
articulating.
good. Yeah, so maybe different, maybe if I can help you try to fill in the blanks because we've had a conversation before this where I got to know you a little better. Um, taking trying to kind of like figure out you see so you're a master of social work student and you're trying to kind of use that to do what kind of things are you interested in doing with that degree?
Yes, so I'm definitely interested in working with folks that are dealing with like
Hmm.
trauma resistant symptoms.
Hmm.
And I am especially interested in working with folks that have been um trying to maybe understand how maybe different patterns in their adult life
Right.
um relate back to things that have happened as a child that maybe didn't seem very impactful
Hmm.
for a while. And yeah, so I think that that's I know I'm forgetting things, but I'm
No, it's
definitely
okay.
that's
It actually sounds a lot like what we're learning in my grad school program. We're talking about how, like, ego driven, and there's a lot of different things that are attached to the concept of the ego, but like how who we are affects who we are going forward, and how those patterns in our childhood can affect who we are as an adult. And it's like about how identifying those patterns, the ones we repeat, help us break those patterns. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
yes, yes. And I think especially really naming and understanding dissociation
Mm,
as just a thing in general that's not really very often addressed or talked about.
definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
something I'm very
So what would you say when you use the word dissociation? I mean, I know there are a lot of people use that word in a lot of different contexts in a lot of different ways. What does it mean for you?
well, yeah, I do think it's important to definitely cover
Mhm.
the spectrum as best as possible when trying to explain my um I don't want to say approach, but just really like taking the entire spectrum of consideration and acknowledging it is always important when talking about
Right.
dissociation. And so everything from you are scrolling on social media
Hmm.
for maybe a bit longer than you would like, or you're scrolling and you're thinking nothing, or
Hmm.
you're finding that you feel really maybe later you realize that it doesn't make you feel very good, but it's
Right.
really hard to notice that in the moment and maybe getting lost in losing time and things like that. And of course, you can lose time just driving your car is like a common
Hmm.
example. These are all like lower end of the dissociative spectrum things, all the way up to things that involve like someone's inner parts, especially for folks that have been dealing
Hmm.
with childhood trauma, um, yeah, PTSD things and yeah, parts work.
Yeah, definitely. Um, so when it comes to aspects of your story, I know that different aspects of dissociation and trauma have affected, you know, where you've been, how you've gotten to where you are, and there's been patterns you kind of had to break. Could you describe a little bit about how what you've been through in your life has affected what you're passionate about trying to do for a living?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I love that question. So I found that when I was a kid, I felt
Hmm.
very much like there was a lot going on, of course, around me with the adults that I didn't quite
Hmm.
understand. I kind of noticed dissociation, just with things that the adults were dealing with within themselves and also with the way that they
Right.
were trying to help me understand the world.
Hmm.
And I didn't like it. It made me feel very uncomfortable, but then
Hmm.
I started to kind of notice um things within myself. And of course, for a while, I didn't have a name for this.
Hmm.
Um, I started to notice those same kind of things presenting within myself. And um, of course, everyone's dissociation presents differently. But for a very long time, I was wondering, like, what is this? What is happening? And why isn't
Hmm.
anyone to talk to me about it? Because, something is happening here. So I spent a lot of time kind of doing my own reading,
Hmm.
and better understanding, uh, and really advocating for myself when it came
Right.
to what I was experiencing that I felt like, I couldn't really name. And so I really want to bring my both my lived experience and, everything that I've been reading about just because it's such a fascinating topic. Um,
Right.
really want to bring that to as many, people that feel they would benefit from working with me.
Yeah. Have you always been the type of person, like even since like when you were young, to just kind of you want to find things out, you want to investigate things? Have you always been like really investigative in that way?
Always been a curious soul. Always loved asking like
Me too.
why, what. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, very much so. I think that whenever people kind of people like you or even me to an extent go through these kind of journeys where we have to examine ourselves to such an extent, it requires us to be like really inquisitive, like to investigate everything that way. We're almost like we almost have to like play detectives on who we are.
Yeah.
So then we get to playing detective with everything.
Yeah, and it's I really enjoy like the concept of like the mad scientist because
Yeah.
I really identified with that. And it was definitely a survival thing.
Right.
Because if I hadn't become obsessed with, you know, understanding these things about myself, then I don't know if they would have been uncovered or who knows how long it would take.
Hmm.
And yeah, I definitely am a big fan of going on Google, of course, with like taking everything with a grain of salt and
Right. Right.
just like reading on Reddit about other people's experiences. And
Hmm.
you know, if you can get into research and stuff, research is always helpful, but all these things are great starting points for really investigating your own experience.
Right. And one of the things is like if it, you know, if you do that and like and this is especially important like now that you're in grad school and I'm in grad school now, like it's when when it comes to doing that, one of the things that we get taught is how to figure out like sifting through sources, which ones make sense, which ones don't make sense. When it comes to like I feel like there's a lot of stuff online right now that kids are exposed to, and that like especially when it comes to stuff like about mental health and substances and all this kind of stuff, what is a good way that not only like some tools that they can have to help them sift out, you know, the not so reliable stuff from the reliable stuff, as well as having their parents be able to be more of an active part of that process.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that the most important tool you could have is having an open mind and
Mm,
understanding that our current understandings of things, you know, as far as, you know, what we understand about the mind, they're always changing. We, you know, are always learning new things. And
hmm.
um, you know, that if also we're not getting things, there's so much that can be left to interpretation. The folks that are doing the work and then like telling you about their experience,
Right.
like that's their experience. And like, you know, if you're reading the DSM, like that is the DSM, but like nothing is not neither of those things can encapsulate the entirety of,
Sure.
you know, the topic. Yeah, like always do more research, more reading, and understand that you it's pretty hard to know everything, right?
Right. No, I do think I do agree with you that I think that while there is like definitely value in being able to differentiate between like you know a reliable source and unreliable source, I do think a lot of it really does kind of like you know suggested start up here, because like it's more about how someone thinks, because the ability to recognize that starts up here rather than just someone handing them the right things or the wrong things, because at some point they're going to be exposed to, we all are going to be exposed to certain things that might be reliable or unreliable, and being taught the skills on how to identify those things is really important. So if you could go back a little bit, in terms of just talking a little bit about your journey, how you got to where you are, um, you know, when it comes to, you know, what started you down, I think, I don't want to say like a bad path, because that's like such a,
Pretty accurate. It's pretty accurate. You could ask
okay,
my family. I'm always coming to them with research and look at what I found. And yeah.
all right, well then, Janelle, what went wrong?
Yeah. Oh man.
I'm totally like, I'm totally
Okay.
like joking with that, but like,
Oh,
yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. I'm like I would be cracking up right now if I didn't have to actually think about and articulate. Just I love it. I love it.
Okay.
Yeah, what went wrong? Could you
Hmm.
maybe help me understand where to begin?
That's true. That's a better point. So,
Yeah.
I guess you went through through a period of time where you started kind of struggling.
Oh yeah.
What kind of triggered that? How did that start? What made you kind of decide to? Because you said you're very investigative, and you know, on one hand that's a very good thing, but on the other hand it's a very risky thing. On one hand, did taking the left turn become the wrong turn?
Yeah. Okay. I think that for me, when I started to it was kind of when I realized that my internal experience wasn't
Hmm.
matching up with what the adult, and this is me as a kid,
Hmm.
what the adults understood my experience to be. I think that's when I really said, okay, let me go ahead
You
and,
had that thought process as a child? That's
yeah,
kind of impressive.
thank you, thank you. Yeah, I felt like there was so much going on with my anxiety
Hmm.
and just the different ways that I had been processing a lot of, and I don't mind talking, further about this, but
Sure.
a lot of the field we call them ACEs, right? But
Right,
just
right.
that were traumatic that were happening. And when you're a kid, of course, it's hard to articulate these things. Um and yeah, all the adults around me just seemed to not hear the alarms that I was hearing them all the
Hmm.
time. And I just really got to a point where I was like, well, I have Google and
Hmm.
I don't know, yeah. It
Was
just
it
kind of
more like the alarms were sounding within you and you were trying to get everybody else to hear the alarms? Or was it more just like, you were hearing the alarms and you were like, I don't even know if their ears are good enough to hear the alarm, so I'm just not going to bother.
oh yeah, it's definitely it's evolved. It's evolved.
Okay.
So it started out as me thinking that that hoping that the adults around me would hear the alarms as well.
Hmm.
Me then realizing that no one was able to hear the alarm and internalizing that and really thinking
Mm.
a lot that like, oh, well, this must be an entirely my problem, which is something that I
Gotcha.
struggle with. But then oftentimes, later on in my journey, I kind of realized that the adults around me didn't see it because they were also dealing with the same things and they didn't see that within themselves either. So it took a long time to get to that point for sure.
Okay. And
Mhm.
so what direction did that experience take, or maybe what directions did that experience take you in when you kind of realized no one, or at least felt like no one can see this but me, or no one can hear this but me? What was your, I don't know, what was your response, I guess would be the right word.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, well, at first I definitely had some help, I think, in realizing
Hmm.
that things were need to be have an intervention. Um, I did have a social worker spend some time with me when I was, I think,
Hmm.
in the fifth grade. And that was was a good way for me to start really understanding just how separate, what was going on for me internally
Sure.
was from what everyone else was seeing. And of course, this is always hard to talk about, so I might ask you to repeat the question.
No, it's okay. So basically, I was asking like, what kind of response did you have to their lack of response?
Oh, oh boy, that's yeah, that was such a range of emotions.
Hmm.
When it first was happening, I definitely felt very much like invisible. Um,
Hmm.
I felt unimportant for a while. I
Hmm.
think that was really something that persisted until I began to understand that the adults had the blind spots they did because they were also struggling with the things that I was struggling with, generational trauma and all.
Hmm.
Um, and I ooh, I'm really floundering here.
It's
Can
all
you repeat
right.
it
Well,
one more time?
so
Yeah.
basically, their lack of response, it sounds like, makes it seem like it seems like their lack of response led to you kind of wanting to. It sounds like you're saying that it increased your reaction and like the intensity of your reaction, or did it make
Mhm.
you go inward a little bit more?
Yeah. Okay. I can definitely talk about that. And you're just seeing me like do a little bit of tapping too.
That's fine. You can even talk about what that is if
Oh,
for the audience.
yeah. Oh, I've got so much we could definitely go into
Some
about
coping
coping.
skills. Yeah.
So I struggled kind of up and down the spectrum. I was diagnosed with borderline just a
Hmm.
few weeks ago in 2020. But that I feel would very much encapsulate kind of what the experience was for me. When I was a small child, a lot of my stuff was internalized because I
Right.
think it has a lot to do with socialization of like people assigned female at birth,
Hmm.
um, and just kind of the
Right.
expectations. Yeah,
We
yeah.
talked a little bit about that.
Okay.
Yeah, the idea of well, you could speak on that a little bit more, I think, where it's the idea of like, what that means in society and societal expectations and all that. What did that mean for you?
Yeah, for me, it meant that when I was experiencing things that made me uncomfortable, I did go inward. I went very
Okay.
much inward and made myself as small as possible. And I kind of got very much into like a freeze state. And that became my default for a while. It was like
Hmm.
I wouldn't move, I would be very stiff and I would kind of lose that connection with my somatic,
Right.
process, like just knowing things about my body, where my shoulders were,
Hmm.
and
Dissociation type of stuff.
all that, yeah, all the things that are not really, dissociation is not just in your brain, it's everything,
Right.
right?
It Yeah, it's kind of so
So
one
yeah,
of
go
the
ahead.
yeah, you can go ahead.
Okay. I don't know. Okay. So yeah, John is so I don't know if you want to cut this part out or whatever you want. John
We'll
is
figure it out.
awesome. He was asking me, how he could support me with like me dealing with my dissociation while we're doing the podcast. And I wanted to um kind of just show myself dealing with it as we're talking because I think
Hmm.
that John brought up that having permission to kind of do these coping things. So I was just off camera kind of shaking my arms and
Hmm.
sometimes I'll go like that and just like really make these sounds and just get it out
Hmm.
from the, the my core and just there's so many things that
Hmm.
would be really helpful I think with self-regulating through dissociation and like processing if they weren't looked at as like weird being neurodivergent is
Right. What it's a trip. And we talked about like expectations earlier in the conversation. I think it was in a slightly different context, but those expectations can be kind of, like overwhelming at times. And could you talk a little bit more about how those techniques help you and also just what those experiences are like for you, especially the dissociation experience, because I don't think a lot of people really understand what that's about. I mean, you've talked about the spectrum, I think more in a general sense, but I think your experience with it is very, very interesting.
oh yeah. Oh yeah, it's interesting, right? I I've been all up and down. I the spectrum as it's like labeled. And
Hmm.
so let me see. I deal with pretty I would say severe dissociation.
Hmm.
So for most folks, dissociation is not a problem, if you're spacing out when you're driving, if you're driving like somewhere far, if you're driving a route that like you've driven many times before. But for me, it's kind of I really was dissociating while I was driving all the time. And so that looked
Like
like
beyond autopilot.
beyond autopilot.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, because autopilot is what people experience, I think, on the lower end.
Okay.
And for me, it was very much like, well, I'm driving and it took a lot of practice to be grounded in that type of environment, and in that type of circumstance. But the cars don't look real, the trees don't look real.
Hmm.
The light might be really bright. Um, I don't, so that's derealization is when your surroundings don't.
Right.
And then depersonalization, I was
Hmm.
also experiencing where it was like I was dealing with a lot of like stress for no reason, really.
Hmm.
Like it was nothing was happening. I wasn't in traffic or anything, but I was like constantly on edge. And I think that had to do more with the PTSD. But
Sure.
I was very much unaware of the fact that I was on edge
Right.
while I was driving. I just thought it was normal. I thought I was like driving fine. And
Hmm.
I think that I wasn't driving fine. Sometimes I was making a lot of decisions that were not smart
Hmm.
decisions. And for a while I was also, kind of, yeah, I don't know. It just, I think, yeah,
You felt separate from yourself to some extent.
definitely felt
Okay.
sad for myself. Um, Definitely didn't feel like my body was real or that
Hmm.
really that I was real. And so this all sounds really like I hate the word crazy, but from just like a Philly slang perspective, like that's crazy, like
Right.
it's hard to understand unless you've experienced it, and it's something that can be really scary if you don't know what's going on or what to do.
Right. Like if someone really doesn't know about this, it does like to the ear just kind of hit them a little crazy. Like it doesn't sound unless you've really experienced it. Like that's why I think this is so important because it's like no, this does happen to real people. It's more common than people think it is. A lot more common than people think it is actually, but there's just so much more of a stigma around it. I think that people have had probably moments in their lives where this has happened to them to one extent or another. But if it's like what you're describing, where it's almost I don't know, would you call it a regular occurrence or
For me, it was constant for
okay,
a long time, yeah.
gotcha? Because I know with my experience with mental illness when I was in the worst stages of it, there were moments where it was like it felt I had moments where I don't know if I felt separate from my body, but I felt separate from who I was because I was doing things and it was almost like who is this person and who is doing these things like why won't they stop? It was like one version of me outside of me was like yelling at the person that was doing these things like what are you doing, stop, and that person couldn't stop. There was sort of this weird mental separation. um and I think that's what you talk about with the spectrum is like one is literally like not being in yourself at all. Another is like, just autopilot on driving. And then there's that middle where it's like, who is the who is this person that has taken over my body? Like and what or why am I acting so weird? This doesn't feel like me. That like when people say that isn't me, like, I don't do that. I've
Yeah,
never been that person.
right.
That is
But
like
you've done
almost
it,
a
right?
right,
Yeah.
like you've done it. Like it's something like you can't not like you're accountable for it, like it's to at least an extent, right? And I think that's where talking about this type of thing is so important.
Wow. Yeah. That was amazing, John. Yes. I really appreciate the way that you really roped all that together because um yeah, being able to articulate that. And I mean, I've been reading so much about things that sometimes it's just like, oh, I'll get mixed up. I'll start talking about like when I was experiencing like actual like DID, and like sometimes
Hmm.
I use it with like parts, which is what you were just talking about.
Right. For
Which is
those who
like
don't know, that's dissociative identity disorder, which is
yes.
more incorrectly now known as multiple personality disorder sometimes.
Yeah, it used to be known as multiple personality, and now yeah, it's definitely DID, dissociative identity disorder. It's thought to be pretty rare. Of course, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if anyone knows exactly how, prevalent it is.
Hmm.
It's definitely different from the idea of parts, and everyone has parts.
Right.
And like you can experience smaller moments like you were saying where you were like, well, that wasn't me, it didn't seem like me, or that's not what I normally do, and that can be like talking about something that might be every day where maybe you curse and you don't normally curse and you're like, oh, well, that's
Right.
versus like going farther up the spectrum,
Hmm.
folks who are maybe involved in like domestic violence, um,
Hmm.
where it's like they don't remember that they were antagonizing or,
Right.
perpetrating. You can ask them about it and they will have no memory of it. Yeah, it's just
People who are involved in a lot of like sometimes are in the severe have severe addiction issues or severe substance abuse issues. The drug will do things like that to them, and then they like, well, that wasn't me, I was drunk, or that wasn't me, I was high. And it's like, well, you kind of were, but you were the one who did to an extent put it in your system. And that's why addressing that issue is important. um if you don't have it, like, and addressing any of these issues is important, because sometimes when we're doing things that, like you said, if they're small and it's like, oh, that was weird, I don't normally do that, to anything where it's like, that was so morally disgusting to me that I could not possibly have done that, so I'm just going to pretend that was a different person.
Yeah, or that didn't happen, or yeah, all of those things that, that it wasn't that bad, or,
Hmm.
just really coming up with the narratives, um, the internal narrative to make sense of things, which is what we're always trying to make sense of the world. But when it comes to the ways that dissociation can impact other people,
Right.
it's yeah, it's not trying to figure out what exactly to say. It definitely makes for something confusing to
Hmm.
everyone involved.
Would you say that we dissociate ourselves from dissociation as a society?
Yes. Yes. I was just talking about that in class today. Yeah.
Really? That's
I really
amazing.
was. I really was. It's something and I have a tendency to like push too much when it comes to talking about things that
Mm.
people don't want to talk about. It's something I'm working on.
I
It's
relate so hard to that.
It can be problematic though. It can definitely be it's
Right,
like, there's the idea that like, oh, I'm doing some type of good by talking about, something that maybe people aren't thinking about. But then there's also if someone doesn't want to think about something, that's
right,
okay. If the dissociation is not, if you don't want to think about, if you're dissociating from things that are deep down, rooted traumas, and it's helping you
right.
get your day, then I'm not gonna, say like, oh, you need to be working on your dissociation and like, working. Like, I'm not gonna say that. It's when you
Yeah,
say that
I
it's
could
interfering.
I could
Yeah.
see how that would not be well received. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
only when it's interfering with like your daily functioning, and then, if you start having issues where, people around you are telling you that they don't remember, that you don't
mhm,
remember that, this happened and you don't remember.
right,
Right, not people around you. I need to be careful about my words. Not people around you telling you that you don't remember things, but when you don't remember things that people are telling you that you've done,
got
is
you.
more than one person, and
Right,
people
like
that,
multiple witnesses.
yeah, and people that you trust. And
Sure.
Thank you all so much for watching. And thanks once again to Janelle for being so vulnerable and sharing, offering her insights and expertise and knowledge and all that kind of stuff. Um, this will be part one of two of this conversation. I cut this conversation into two pieces. I'm not sure if the part two is the next episode we're going to release or if we're going to release it at a later date. So keep your eyes peeled for that. And as always, if you want to just want to stay tuned or follow, you know, any of our interesting episodes or conversations, you can always subscribe and you can hit the like button to post notifications. And if you have any thoughts, feel free to leave a comment. We love hearing from you.